Right, welcome everyone. This is another episode in the Power of Listening series, and I'm really delighted to say that today I'm joined by Dr. Jack Pransky, who was in retirement. I don't know if that's semi-retirement now. We'll get into that in a little bit, I think. But for those that don't know, Jack has been a 3 principles trainer and practitioner since about 1992. He's coached coaches and trained trainers and authored many books. And I think that's how I first knew of you, Jack, through, I think I read somebody well, I think I read them all. So like somebody should have told us really impacted me. But then there was Parenting from the Heart, and Modelo, and like more recently Paradigm Shift, and I'm sure that's not all of them. And then I attended the training in Spain that you did, and that was centered around listening, and that hugely impacted me, which we might get into later. But I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, not really. I was just thinking of the hike we took, but
yes, yeah, which was amazing. Yes, you did a tour of Europe, I think, if I remember rightly, didn't you? And stayed, and we ended up walking along the moors that didn't quite go to plan. I think we ended up in a mud bog.
It was a great walk, though.
Yeah, fantastic. It was lovely. So I wanted to kick off first with asking you to explain what deep listening, or listening with love, or heart-centered listening, whichever name you want to put on it, what that means to you and how that's different from just everyday listening.
Well, I personally call it deep listening because by deep, it means it's not the way we normally listen. It just occurred to me right at this moment that we listen a lot through our intellect. And what we don't realize about listening mostly is that when we're listening to people, we have thoughts. And sometimes we have a tendency to follow the thoughts that are in our head instead of staying with the person, because the other person might say something that triggers us to think about something about ourselves, or suddenly we think of something we forgot at the store, or we think of what we have to do, or we might even get a thought that makes us, from what they say, that makes us stay with ourselves. And every time that happens, we have actually left the other person, and we then are listening to our own thinking. So we lose them, and we are focusing on ourselves. And deep listening is the opposite. It's like we are basically a total blank. We just become totally blank. So I'm not talking about anything like active listening, so-called, where you repeat back what the other person is saying. It's got nothing to do with that. I'm not talking about like looking at body language, because even that can keep our mind busy. I'm talking about really kind of like falling back into nothingness. And we are just taking the person in purely, without our veil of thinking being in the way.
Yeah.
And then we see what we get, see if anything comes to us. And it's at a whole nother level.
I love that description. So like, for me, it feels just like a blank slate
Yes.
where I don't, it's really hard to describe, but it's almost like you're receiving like an embodied understanding of what it like. I don't know, like you're not trying to work out the words that they're using or trying to get to the end of the sentence or assuming that you know what they mean. You're just kind of soaking in what they're sharing. And sometimes what you hear is much deeper than the words that they're actually sharing.
Yes. A former partner of mine said it was like listening to the rain. And I think that's a beautiful, beautiful description, because there's no intellect going on when we listen to the rain. You know, we're just taking in the rain. And that's the way we want to be with people, even though they're using words. We want to be the same way as we are when we're listening to the rain.
I love that. And sometimes I describe it as like not judging like what somebody's saying or like assessing whether you agree or don't agree, but when you listen like you've just described, when you're listening to someone like you're listening to the rain, like it doesn't even occur to you to judge. You're just soaking in it.
Yeah, I mean, if we're totally blank, there's no judging. I mean, if we get a thought of judgment, because sometimes thoughts pop into our head, they pop in like really quickly, and we want them to fly out just as quickly. So we don't want to hang on to anything like that. Thought pops in, we just see it for what it is, and it goes out.
Yeah. And it feels lovely. It feels lovely to listen like that, doesn't it?
Yes, and it does, because it's like a connection to our the essence of who we really are. And we're connecting to the essence of who they really are.
Yeah.
And there's a beautiful feeling that is attached to that. In fact, if we're not in a beautiful feeling, we know we're not deep listening.
And so, like, why would somebody want to listen like that other than to get to be in a beautiful feeling? Because obviously lots of people are busy and sometimes you're talking to someone and there's a sense of, well, get to the point already. I've got to get on with this. So why would people slow down and take the time to listen like that?
Because it feels better. Because we have a better experience, and they do too.
Yeah.
And the reason they have a better experience is because it really feels good to be listened to. I mean, it just feels great to be really listened to. When people are first falling in love, they are great deep listeners. They just, whatever the person says is like, great. And then we hang around for a while and other thoughts come in, get in the way of that.
I think like after the training that I attended in Spain, and I mean, it was all centered around listening. And what changed for me was, or what it looked like, and it still looks like now, is that, you know, if I just spent my entire life listening to people deeply, then that would be amazing.
Yeah, you'd be having a lot of great experiences.
Yeah. I saw that the more I did that with the girls, the
You mean
better.
your own kids?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The better our relationships were, and the less I had to get involved in fixing their problems or, you know, helping them find solutions. It completely changed the way I parented and still do when I
That's a
catch
really
myself.
important point. Because there's something about a kid knowing that they're really being listened to, you know, instead of just instructed to do things. Parents like to instruct kids about how to lead their lives, but we don't take the time to truly listen to them. What's going on with them? And they don't know a lot of, they don't really know the reason they say a lot of things. They don't really know what's behind it. But we might be able to listen so deeply enough that what's behind it occurs to us. So in other words, we might know things through deep listening that they don't even know themselves. That's why it's kind of like a fool's mission to really listen to the words. We're listening beyond the words to some intelligence that's beyond the words.
I've got so many examples of that. It's just and sometimes it's, you know, as parents, like when your children get into difficulties or they're going through some issues, or it's really tempting to jump in and offer solutions and say, why don't you do this, why don't you do that? But it's been my experience that the more deeply I listen and the more present I am with them, the less of a problem it is. Like, even if nothing actually occurs to either of us, like just this sharing and talking and being able to get it off their chest, and be rid of it, seems to have such a like powerful effect. And then I've noticed too that sometimes they'll notice things for themselves that they hadn't realized before.
Yeah, that allows their natural intelligence and wisdom to kick in and guide them, because that's what it's there for. You know, it's there to guide us through life, and there's only one way to hear it, and that's when our mind gets quiet or clears. then we can hear it. Then we can hear this wisdom talking to us. Because it's not really coming from us, it's coming through us. So in a way, that's what we're listening for, but we're not trying to hear that. Because if we were trying to hear that, we'd get in the way of our listening. So when we're just a blank, and let's say somebody says something that's very puzzling to us. Well, we want to be puzzled. Just be puzzled about it. Not try to figure it out, but just there's something that doesn't compute here. And we can, so a question might occur to us. And we ask the question, go back to listening. It's like what you brought up before about trying to get to the point or something like that. I think you said something like that. Well, it might occur to us to say to somebody, so what's your point? And then go back to listening. So questions occur to us naturally out of our listening. And then we ask them and then go back to listening. Which brings up the second reason that we want to listen to people, besides having a good experience ourselves and they're having a better experience too. It's like certainly if we're coaching or counseling someone, we have to be in a state of really deep listening in order to bring out the best in them, really.
Yeah.
But even if we're with a friend or family member or our kids, like you were talking about, the answer to what's really behind what they're saying is embedded in that natural intelligence. And we're wanting such a quiet mind that we can hear the natural intelligence speaking. And the only way to hear that is if we're totally blank. It's like we're an empty vessel. We're an empty vessel that is just being there with love for the other person. And if we say, well, what if you don't feel love for your neighbor or somebody who's coming at you or something like that? Well, at the essence of that person, there is the love. At the essence of that person, they are love. And so are we. Excuse me. So we want to be with the essence of that other person. And we know they're going to say things where it's coming from their maybe crazy thinking. But it might occur to us to have compassion for that person because they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're talking about. Might occur to us to be humble because we've said things that we don't know what we're talking about either.
Sometimes it's just like, are you okay? Sometimes just not meeting it with what you're receiving makes a world of difference.
Yes, that's a great point.
And I've noticed as well, and I don't want to kind of give the impression that I deeply listen all the time, because I don't fall in and out of it. But I have noticed that with me and Matt, sometimes what's occurring in a situation, you know, it might be an accusation, like, why haven't you done this? Or that if you take the time to listen to that lovingly, then often there's something behind that.
Yes, that's so true. And if we deeply listen, we'll hear what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I went from being, I went from being a parent and a partner who thought I had to not control everything, but make sure everything was running okay. I thought it was my job to make sure the kids were polite and they learned everything that they needed to learn before they grew up and everything like that. And I became much more relaxed and curious about who they really were, and trusting of what they wanted to express. And it's a much more enjoyable and less worrisome
Yeah.
way of parenting.
And I'm glad you brought up curious, because curious is a beautiful, deep listening state. We're just totally interested in whatever they have to say. And we're curious about it. And we want to know more about it. So not only is it being with someone where we're putting out love in our hearts, it's also being curious, and it's also being puzzled when something comes up that's puzzling.
So,
like, for example, I'm sorry.
No, go on.
There was a woman who I was getting to know just over the phone, and I realized that she got into difficult relationships again and again and again in her life. Now that's puzzling. What would make somebody get into difficult relationships over and over and over again? And so you kind of like ask yourself that question, set an intention to hear it, and then take it off our mind. Because if we hold it in our mind, we're not going to be listening. So we take it off our mind, but the intention has been set. And what I heard was, that's the way she grew up. And it was a habit. She grew up in a very difficult relationship with her parents. And that became familiar. And she wouldn't even know what to do with herself if she were in a healthy relationship. Because an unhealthy relationship is like standard practice.
Yeah.
And so all that came out of my listening through puzzlement and curiosity.
You've just reminded me of something else that I learned when I attended the training in Spain, that I do without thinking now. I do it all the time, but I can clearly remember first doing it there. And so like now when I'm reading or puzzled about something, or just trying to like get an answer about something in my life, I will like ask the best question that I can, and then I'll leave it alone.
Yes. That's the way to have wisdom speak. And in a way, that what you're describing is deep listening to ourselves. So not only can we deep listen to other people, we can deep listen to ourselves, which is a very nice, excuse me again. I forgot to have water with me.
Oh.
I was not deep listening to myself, because if I was, it would have told me to have water with me. Because, you know, it's like the answers are there, but we can't hear them yet.
Yeah.
And deep listening helps us hear the answers that we need for ourselves. So I'll do what you're suggesting, and I have a tendency to take a walk. I've set my intention to hear it. I've asked the question. It's in reverse order. I've asked the question, set my intention to hear it, and then forget about it. Just go on my walk and see what happens. Because a walk has a tendency for me to clear my mind, especially if I'm walking in the woods or something.
Yeah.
You know, it clears my mind. And then I can hear what I couldn't hear before.
And I just do that now with everything. Like if I'm reading, I'll ask something, and like by the end of it, I'll have seen something new, and I can't remember you giving us that. I remember you telling me to, oh, that's an interesting question. Like, why don't you just leave that and see what comes to you? Like, I think I might have asked something. But yeah, it was just such a huge takeaway, and it's only as we're talking now that I've realised, oh wow, I just do that automatically. I take that for granted.
Well, that's great, Victoria.
So how do we? So for anybody listening that kind of is getting a sense of what deep listening is and how it might be more beneficial, or like something that they want to explore, how would someone go about bringing more of that into their lives?
By setting their intention. In other words, deep listening is either, first of all, we have to get used to it. And that was the whole purpose of the training.
Yeah.
You know, so that people could actually pair up with each other and really pay attention to deep listening and see where they got in their way, or see when it really worked. When it really worked, people can feel it. They feel it in their hearts. They know they're there. There's no question. So so we're talking to somebody going along about a business, and it might occur to us in the moment, wait a minute, I'm not deep listening. So as soon as it occurs to us, we go into deep listening. We just become blank. Or we can set our intention beforehand to deep listen to somebody, which is what I always do when before I start a coaching session or something with them. I say a little prayer to myself, and that gets and I set my intention to just be a total blank and just be able to take it in and hope I hear something.
I love that.
And if I don't, fine. I'm fine with not hearing something. It just means I'm not deep listening well enough. It means I'm not blank enough.
So on that note, Jack, do you want to share a little bit about the training? Because I know, like, you've not done any, you've not done it for years, have you? And you're doing a deep listening. Is it a weekend or?
Yes, it is. It's a deep listening weekend with Sheila Masand. Sheila has been the one who has set up all my trainings in Spain. And now she's just gotten to the point, she compiled this wonderful book on coaching through the 3 principles, which is what I teach and what she now teaches. And that has allowed her to like step out and, do trainings herself. So I'm basically here to support to support her in doing that. But we're going to do one of these deep listening weekends that I was just suggesting, where we have people practice, because people have to get a sense of what deep listening is in terms of them attempting it and seeing what's different about it, actually feeling what's different about it compared to the way that they typically listen. And then once you can feel the difference, it's a question of, I hate to use the word practice because that sounds like a doing, but it's more, the more we point ourselves in that direction, the more we're going to have a good experience with it and feel it and know when we're off.
Yeah.
Because you can feel the contrast in the difference. So it's actually in that one-on-one kind of practice that we can truly hear and feel what deep listening is all about.
And is that 3 days?
I think it's either 2 or 3 days. I think it's just Saturday and Sunday.
Okay. In Albia, which is a beautiful.
Albia, Spain.
Yeah.
Which is right on the Mediterranean coast, which is beautiful.
It's a lovely
it has
location.
a wonderful feeling to it.
And the hotel is amazing as well. I can remember being sat there thinking, how on earth, like, what have I done in my life to end up here? This is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like the hotel is luxury, but it is, I mean, for the room and food, it's so inexpensive. It's like something like, I'm just guessing right now, but I think it's something like 50 euros it's gone up from 35 to 50 euros a night, which includes all meals. It includes all meals.
It's just fantastic.
I mean, it's really unbelievable.
I don't know how they buy it for that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you know the details of how people can find out more about that. If not, I can get the link and share it under this video.
Yeah, I don't have the link at my fingertips, so that would be great if you did that.
That's fine. And if anybody has any questions or wants to reach out, can they? Or
sure.
Yeah,
sure. You can, put my email address down.
Brilliant.
As well. Yeah, and people, seriously, people learn the most about deep listening not by hearing us talk about deep listening. People want to know how you do deep listening, but there's really no how. There's just, it's underneath any hows.
Feels like for me, it's just noticing. It's noticing when you're not, and
feeling when you are and noticing when you're not. That's really cool. Yeah.
That's lovely.
And the only way to really see that is to experience the difference.
Yeah. Very much so.
But it changes everything. I mean, if I'm not having a good experience with somebody, it's because I'm not deep listening to them. And even if it's somebody who comes at me with an argument or something, instead of defending myself, I'll go into deep listening, and you know, I'll hear what's behind them coming at me. You know, there's something behind that, and that's what I'm listening for. And that's a beautiful experience, to be able to hear what's behind somebody coming at you, or somebody having a problem with you, or somebody arguing with you. There's something behind that.
It's like what's really going on, and
Yes.
and when you see that, often it's nothing to do with you.
Yeah. Or even if it does have something to do with us, and we hear that, that's a beautiful thing. You know, we might have to swallow our pride or something like that, but it's a beautiful thing to really know if we're not seeing something the other person is.
Thank you, Jack.
Well, you're entirely welcome.
I just want to, like, before we finish, I just want to say that, like, if anyone's thinking about Spain, to seriously look at it, because I know they can't, like, they'll spend the 2 days there, and it's inevitable that they'll see something for themselves, but also just the experience of deep listening will have an impact, that they'll be able to take forward, and for the rest of the life, like, in whatever situation that they're in, that will have an impact on all the relationships going forward.
That's really true. That's really true. I'm glad you said that. And the worst thing that can happen is people are in a beautiful setting for a weekend.
With amazing people.
And just relax with really nice people. Yeah.
Warm weather.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
So brilliant.
So it's at the end of May. I think it's the second to the last weekend in May.
Right.
Yeah.
So it should be warm then, I would have thought.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Weather's unpredictable, but
I think I came in October, and I came straight from London, and I had all my warm English winter clothes with me. So I had to do a bit of improvising there, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we'll get to spend some time on the beach.
Fantastic. Yeah. So thank you very much, and I will put the links underneath.
Okay, great. Thank you, Victoria. Jack. And it's great to see you again.
And you. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Oh.
Take care.